doesn't know when enough is enough.
Just say the word.
Women down!
Turn around.
You can't kill me. Nothing can.
Welcome, Power fans. We are back to cover the mid-season finale of Power Ghosts Season 4. Before we begin, like and subscribe. I'll be covering every single episode of Power this season. Also have an interview that I recently did with Obi, aka Kyle Vincent Terry. I've linked that in the description if you want to go back and check out his thoughts about how the series is going to end. As you can probably tell, my energy is not normally how it is. This mid-season finale, man, I'm like, what is going on? What was that? There were some good points about the episode, I'll say that. But overall, this episode has kind of had the same issues that we've been seeing for the entire first half of the season, which is essentially everything has felt like filler. You know, like they're basically holding everything as a placeholder until we get to the second half of the season where hopefully things explode and we get the power that we're used to. We basically have been treading water for about 3 episodes now. And I feel like you can almost jump into the second half that's going to start in September, without having seen the first half. I don't think you really would be missing anything. I don't think really anything substantial happened enough where this first half of the season is really essential, maybe outside of Diana's pregnancy. So let's get right into it. I'll start with one character that they did something with that I've been waiting for, and that's Agent Carter, Michael Ealy's character. One of the big criticisms I've had is I felt that they were kind of wasting Michael Ealy as far as having this straight-laced, typical cop character that we've seen with all the other cops that have been on Power. And I felt like you needed to give him some type of edge to make him a realistic threat to Tariq and Noma and everyone else. And I felt they started doing that a little bit when we saw him kind of checking Tate's brother, and then they went full-fledged this episode with showing his dark side. You know, number one, he has a little bit of mental issues talking to his dead wife. That's number one. But the biggest thing is he's a corrupt cop. And I've always felt that you need some type of cop like that to really be able to take down people like Noma, Tariq, and the Tejadas. And we've finally seen that, but we've seen it on a whole different scale where essentially he has the drug dealers working for him. He's extorting them. And his whole crew is down with it, but everybody on the surface thinks he's a legit, tough-minded cop. So in a sense, he's like the law enforcement version of James St. Patrick. You know, has that facade of being legit, a hardworking businessman, but to those in the streets, they know how ruthless and how he truly is. There's something unrealistic about this. A few things. Number one, if he was this corrupt in the streets and has always been like this would have been known already. So we'll kind of disregard that. But, you know, that was the first thing that came to mind. But the other more glaring thing that kind of hurt this scene for me is that it got to be a little bit over the top when he lined them up and was kind of going over his grand conspiracy plan. It reminded me of what you see with superheroes, you know, when they get caught and then the villain is going through his whole plan. And I couldn't help but think when he was sitting there going over, you know, how things are going to be, holding his cigarette, I'm like, I'm looking at Denzel from Training Day. This is exactly who he looked like and who it seemed like he was mimicking. And that's what kind of took me out of the scene a little bit. I was like, this is a little bit too ridiculous, even for Power. And then the whole idea that he's legalizing drugs, quote unquote, and letting the drug dealers work through him, and there's rules now. I'm like, okay, this is The Wire. We saw this in season 3 with the whole Amsterdam storyline. So one of the big criticisms I've kind of had with this entire episode is that it felt like the writers were kind of playing their greatest hits, but not the greatest hits of what we've seen in Power before. It's really the greatest hits of shows that they've seen that they like. They pulled something from The Wire, I just mentioned Training Day. We also had a ridiculous scene that pulled something from Friday of all movies. And then we've even seen them pull things from Snowfall, which was ridiculous with this whole acid thing. So it felt like this episode really didn't have a strong identity, and it really didn't feel like the Power that we know and love. So that's what I'll say about Agent Carter. I feel like the character that's had kind of the biggest fall off as far as taking them seriously would be Noma. You know, Noma was a complete boss when she came in season 3. Season 4, now she's like a pass around. You know, Davis is getting a little bit, Kane is getting a little bit. I thought for a second maybe Zion was going to get some too. I'm like, come on now, what's going on with Noma? You know, Noma was so straight-laced about her business. and pretty much looked down on everybody in the business because they were they were below her. Everybody was a foot soldier to her, and now she's completely unraveling. Now she's not really a boss. She's reactionary. She's impulsive. She's getting turned on by nonsense. She's almost acting more like Tasha, old school Tasha, from the first couple seasons of Power than the Noma that we had known from season 3. So that's kind of been a complete shock for me. And I don't think there's no way she can even go back to the Noma that we were introduced to. I do think that with Obi out of the picture, we saw how easy it was for Zion to run up on her and put his hands on her. So we've seen kind of Noma have a fall off from the character that we saw in season 3. And that leads to probably, well, not the most ridiculous scene, but one of the biggest ridiculous scenes of this episode was the whole Street Fighter sequence that we saw with Zion and Kane fighting in the pit. I was like, all right, this is a little bit too much for me. And then the Zion character himself, I'm looking at him and he's like a bootleg Unique to me from Racing Kanan. Somebody that I'm just not taking him seriously as someone that's reached that level where he can even compete with someone like Mona and the Tejadas. So I think he's really just to kill time. So he's another character that I feel like I'm not going to miss when he's finally out of the picture. I feel like we're wasting screen time with people like that. Here we are in the last season. I really want the focus to be back on Tariq, Brayden, and hopefully the showdown that we have coming in the second half with Agent Carter. I really want more Tariq and Brayden because it feels like they've been sidelined in favor of the Tejada storyline, which I'm not appreciative of because I feel like we've seen enough of the Tejadas, from the parents down to the children. So again, as I've been saying for like 3 episodes now, we need to start trimming the fat with the Tejadas. I would like all of them to be gone, but I know that's probably not realistic. So at least get 2 of them out the picture. I thought for sure maybe Kane was going to be gone this episode or maybe Drew, but no, it seems like we're going to be dragging that out probably until maybe the second to last episode of the entire show. So I think, the Tejadas are going to be around for a while because now that they're entrenched with Agent Carter, we're going to get a lot more of them before the series is over with, unfortunately. That leads to Diana and Tariq. So their whole storyline, I like where Diana is really trying to stay out of the game. She told her mother that. She's sticking to her guns, even with Tariq. When Tariq tried to give her this whole speech about, I'm going to be a true protector. I'm going to get to the top of the game where, nobody can hurt us. I've learned from my father. And to Diana's credit, she saw through all that nonsense. Obviously, as a woman that's pregnant, she's going to have a more deeper and intimate understanding of what's to come because she's carrying that life inside her body. Something we as men are never going to be able to completely understand, even if we're there completely for our partner. And Tariq is so self-absorbed with himself. He's claiming he's doing this for the child. He's really doing it for himself. Just like he had mentioned, to be where I want to be in the game, I need to pull elements from everybody. Even my father, mother. That's just going to make me the apex predator. And that goes to the whole idea of the episode being named Ego Death, because ego death in theory, which is known from psychology and even religious groups, is the whole idea of washing away your subjective self-identity to reach a higher plane. In some religions, particularly Christianity, they might refer to that as Christ consciousness, just being so elevated that you're above those petty insecurities and faults that you have with yourself. And in his mind, he's not looking at it from a religious angle of being closer to God or stripping away my faults. He's looking at it as I'm going to become have ego death so I can be an apex predator, having no one that can possibly hurt me. That's his idea of an ego death, just being at the top of the food chain, not having no emotion, in what I do. A Komodo dragon doesn't devour a deer or rip its belly out and kill its unborn baby because it's malicious. It does that because it's an efficient killing machine. That's what it's there to do, and it tries to kill its prey as quickly as possible. So that's what Tariq is trying to aspire to, but it's still ego. He's completely self-absorbed, and that's why he wants to do this. As much as he wants to claim it's for the child, it's for himself, and to show that I'm better than my father. And at the same time, he's repeating all the mistakes that his father did before him. He's pretty much going down the same path. Whether that leads to him being killed like his father, that's what we'll have to see. But it also leads to one of the better scenes that I saw this episode is when he had the acid sequence. He starts arguing with himself, and when he pulls the gun out, that's symbolizing him killing himself and killing his ego. But that scene to me would have been so much better if it would have been James St. Patrick he was arguing with instead of himself, because I still feel, as I've been saying this entire season, that in order for the series to be complete, we need that final confrontation between the spiritual realm ghost James St. Patrick and his son, where they have it out, where all between all their differences and where Tariq is at now and where he's trying to go, and his father's opinion on it. I feel like that is the classic scene that we need to complete the series. Of course, we're in the business world too, so does Power have the money to pay Omari Hardwick, to come back and complete the show? Because he's put it out there. He's like, the money's right, we can make things happen. But the reason the show is probably even ending is because Stars has said, as shows go on season after season, they get more expensive, and it's more worthwhile to start a new series with lower paid actors than to keep going on and having to increase the bill. So for the finale, would they be willing to pay Omari to come back and conclude the series? That's what we're going to have to see in September. I think it's worth it. I think it's needed to have a satisfying ending. But we'll see if the people at Stars are willing to make that happen money-wise. But that's what was in my mind watching that scene, is that this would be so much better if he has this type of confrontation with James at some point in part 2 of the final season. Next thing, as far as going back to previous Power storylines and everything, this whole thing with Brayden, even Zion called him Little Tommy. And we saw that on full display. That was one of my other favorite sequences of this episode, is seeing him, Brayden, and Tariq pretty much arguing the exact same way that we saw with Tommy and Ghost, down to even, Brayden having his little sickle cell junkie version of Money Long, this chick that he's so enamored with. That's his version of Holly. Tommy had Holly, Brayden has Elle is her name. Exact same thing. She's strung out, she's doing dumb shit, she spiked Tariq's drink. So that's strike one. She's going to be dead eventually. She's got to go. So that's her first strike. She got 2 more times to do something dumb before she gets killed some type of way. But Brayden can't see it at this point. He's getting strung out as well, snorting. So he's feeling underappreciated because, Tariq is looking at him the same way Ghost looked at Tommy, like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're stupid. You need me to help direct you and keep your impulses under control. So we'll see where that continues to go. Obviously, we don't have seasons upon seasons left. So they're really going to have to cram this kind of discord that we're seeing with Tariq and Brayden over the second half, and we'll see how much Elle plays a part in that. But that was fun to see. That was an obvious callback to the earlier Power seasons with Holly and company, and how contentious, all that was between the 3 of them. So we'll see how that goes down. I also couldn't help but think how much of Brayden's new girlfriend is such a downgrade from who we had last season, the homegirl at Weston Holdings, Kiki. Even though Kiki was about her money and everything, and she didn't really, quote unquote, love Brayden completely, she was someone that kind of had his mind right as far as what he needed to focus on instead of Elle. So this is going to be a disaster for Brayden. He's going to get his heart broke, of course. So we'll see how far down the rabbit hole he goes with that entire storyline. Second half predictions. So one thing I know off the bat with this whole Agent Carter thing, I mentioned earlier that this is going to be a way to rope Councilman Tate back into the storyline, because as you saw, when Agent Carter was going over how it was going to be with Monet, you saw Tate's brother, the cop, was nowhere to be found. He's obviously left out of this because they know he's on the straight and narrow and he's not going to be down for anything like this. So that is going to be one way for Tariq to strike back at Agent Carter. Tate's brother is going to have to make a decision on who is the greater evil, Agent Carter or someone like Tariq. And I think he's going to side with Tariq, and then they're going to rope in Councilman Tate, Lorenz Tate, to come up with a way to take down Agent Carter, probably legally, because Tate is always looking for a score. So if he can expose another corrupt cop that nobody thought was corrupt in Agent Carter, that's a boon for him. I wish it would lead to Tate getting his own show again, the Power Influence show that got canceled. That would be a great way to lead into that. But I don't think they can afford to keep somebody like Lorenz Tate as a regular. So I don't think that show is coming back. But that's where I think they're going to go with Agent Carter's storyline. With the Tejadas, I do think Drew and Kane are going to die in the second half. I think Drew is going to do his whole tortured artist thing for probably most of the show. But I think I can see him and Kane killing each other because they've never been completely cool. And they are always going to have that tension now, especially after what happened with Kane trying to kill him. So I could possibly see that happening, but I can also see Noma killing Kane because obviously she's smitten with him now because he was able to take out Zion for her. But obviously Kane is still pulled between his mother and Noma. And I think eventually Noma is going to get pissed off with that and get tired of Kane, especially now that she has someone like Davis in the mix who's trying to help push her to where she wants to go as far as getting in the political realm with Wiley and getting that type of money. I think she'll just look at it as what's better long term, someone like Kane or someone like Davis. And I think money wise, political wise, more so it works to have someone like Davis in your corner. So I could see Noma possibly killing Kane as well. We only got a cameo from Effie this episode. So I could see her killing Noma because obviously, like I mentioned, she has the Russians backing her, and I don't think she likes being under Noma's hand. And if she sees Noma continually going after Tariq, that's what can possibly rope her back in. Because looking at the parallels with the older Power storylines, obviously Diana now is Tariq's version of Tasha because she's carrying his children. But as far as who is Tariq's Angela, no one really neatly fits into that. Obviously, he's not dealing with anybody in law enforcement. I think Effie comes close because she always tells him how it is, and she always kind of speaks the truth to him, which he needs. And she has an edge to her. So as far as like the true love or someone that he really should be with, it really should be somebody like Effie because they both have that ambition. But Effie's trying to get into the engineering program and be legit. We haven't seen any inkling that Tariq wants to do something like that. He's still just focused on the game. So even Effie doesn't completely fit like an Angela, but she's close. And I don't see Paige Hurd coming back into the storyline, now that she's gone. Witness protection, I don't see her coming back in the second half. That would be kind of shoehorning it in, and I don't think they have enough time to really develop something like that. So really, kind of Effie is the only one that really fits. So we'll see where that goes with Effie and Tariq. Do Diana and Tariq end up together? It's hard to see that now because he's so focused on the game. If Tariq ends up on top and really becomes Ghost in the end, as far as having the empire, having his own version of truth and everything, is going to be at a great sacrifice. He's going to have to lose something to get to that level. Being this apex predator with no one under you, he's going to have to lose his ties to his loved ones to a degree. So he's going to experience some type of big loss and somebody dying. Could it possibly be losing the mother of his child? Would they be bold enough to have Diana killed in some type of crossover? That's a possibility. Losing Tasha, I think that's the last link to his old life. She were to get killed, that would push him to become, completely cold and merciless, particularly in getting revenge to whoever's behind, killing her. So that's a potential way to really show how Tariq can transform completely into the ghost character that he's aspiring to become. So, and the one big one, I'll leave it at this. Salim. Salim is not dead. I am almost 100% sure of that. This whole Diana calling him and him not picking up. If he were dead, his body would have turned up already. We would have seen it on the news or something. She would have been all upset. It would have been all over campus. But there's been no word, nothing. So my little theory is, we're going to have some type of courthouse scene in the second half of the season, and Salim is going to roll in there all bandaged up or holding his stomach, maybe in a wheelchair, maybe he's paralyzed now, and he's going to be testifying against Tariq, and then we'll see where that goes at that point. Does Diana step in and try and save Tariq, or does she use that to be her way to completely break out of the game and to go on her merry way with her new child, who she thinks is, she's going to name Lorenzo if it's a boy? we'll see where that goes. But those are all my predictions for so far. First half of the season, if I had to give it a grade, probably like a C plus. You know, like I said, I feel like we've been treading water for like 5 episodes now. So I hope all this is done with. I hope they've been saving the big firepower for the second half of the season. I think I covered everything. Did I mention this little acid trip sequence with, you know, calling that looking like Friday, essentially? You know, that was ridiculous, but funny. I can't say I didn't laugh watching that. So, like I said, I felt like the writers were calling back to everything. You know, they touched, and we got a little bit of The Wire. We got Snowfall. Cause remember with the wedding when they when the punch got spiked with the acid, I felt like that was the same thing that we saw here. So I feel like they were hitting all the recent shows that they may have watched before they started writing this, and they incorporated a little bit of everything into this episode. But that's all I have. Hope things get even better for the second half. We're going to wait until September. I want to hear your predictions. Who do you think is going to die? Who do you think is going to survive? And I want to hear your big prediction. Does Tariq win in the end, or does he go out like Ghost? You know, does he mimic his father even to the end? And what would be the better ending for you? Would it be him winning, or would it be him dying like Ghost? Is that more of a poetic, stronger ending for this power saga? You guys let me know. I'm going to be covering House of the Dragon for the remainder of that season. So if you like that show, feel free to tap in. I'll be covering that. And if not, I will be seeing you in September to cover the second half of the final season of Power of Ghost. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in September.